The following programming is sponsored by Mark J. Bernstein. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group. Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. How are you? I'm doing great today, feeling great, but my voice is a little hoarse because I spent till pretty late last night at the Rolling Stones show in Philadelphia. Ange, I know, is very jealous of that. She almost ended up being my date for that, but it didn't work out. But anyway, there's my voice. Our guest today has a bit to talk about rock and roll. We'll get to that in a second. In fact, why don't we get to that? His name is Gene Rice. I'm not going to formally introduce him yet, as we always do. And usually we have a topic of the day, but we're going to introduce our topic through Gene's story. So Gene used to be, among other things, in the rock and roll club business many years ago. And Gene, you have a little Rolling Stone story, which I thought would be worth telling.
Well, it's funny, when you mentioned to me, Mark, that you went to the Stones concert, it gave me a deja vu. About 20 years ago, when they played the Atlantic City Convention Center, my wife is a big Rolling Stones fan, and a good friend of mine is a big Rolling Stones fan. So I had gotten 4 tickets. And I got them from like some company who sent the tickets, and they sent 4 Rolling Stones t-shirts, and they sent these 4, it said backstage passes with the big Rolling Stones tongue on the front. It says backstage pass, but I turn it over, it said, no, this is really fake. But we had dinner and we walked into the Atlantic City Convention Center. So I just asked the person as we were going in who was in charge of security, and they said, Big Larry. So I said, can I talk to Big Larry? So Big Larry came over. And I introduced him to my friend who looks like Rod Stewart. I said, this is Rod Stewart's brother. Rod may show up later to sing a song or two, but we have these backstage passes. We have no idea what backstage is. So Big Larry says, just follow me. Next thing you know, we're following him downstairs. We must have passed 50 security guards that worked for Big Larry. We're out. He puts us outside of the 4 dressing rooms. Each one of the Stones had their own dressing room. There was no one else back there. It was right next to the stage. Now I'm down there just laughing, having a great time. My friend is freaking out. Oh my God, I can't believe we're down here. Oh my God, they're going to catch us. I said, just relax. Charlie Watts was in the room right in front of us. We're going to meet the Stones, and it'll be a lot of fun. He was so nervous. He's shuffling around. Next thing you know, 2 private Rolling Stone security with Uzi machine guns comes up to us and says, who are you people? What are you doing here? And they take the backstage pass, turn it around, and says, this is not really real. And he goes, everyone knows the Stones do not have any backstage. Who brought you down here? I said, Big Larry. The Big Larry brought you down here? Next thing you know, they're escorting us out. But at the same time, Keith Richards is walking out of his dressing room. And from my club days, Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats started in my club. And I knew he was good friends with Keith. I say, Keith, I'm a good friends with Brian Setzer. He goes, hey, how's Brian? The security guards are going, don't talk to him. They snuck in. So thank God they didn't make us leave. They let us go to our seats. But it's a story that I haven't told in a long time, Mark. You made me think of it, so thank you for bringing that up.
Well, two quick things before Ange comments on this. One is I have a story that I told them offline. I won't go into it now, where I walked off stage. I walked off stage with Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney and Wings in 1976 and spent a little time with them before I was thrown out, but I had a little fun with it afterwards. The other thing I wanted to say is that last night was my last Stones show. I'm all but certain, because I'm just not into the really big, loud shows in stadiums anymore. I guess it's an aging thing, and I like smaller, more intimate concerts anymore. But my first show was, I believe, in 1971. I believe it was the Exile Main Street tour, and Stevie Wonder was the opening act, and it was the best encore ever in the world. That I told you the story. I won't tell everyone the story right now. In fact, I'm going to search and find the I doubt there's video for it, because nobody took videos back then. but it was Stones and their horn section, and Stevie Wonder and his horn section, and Mick leading out Stevie and doing this great medley of Uptight and Satisfaction. And, of course, the closing song last night, which it's not every night, was Satisfaction. So I figured it was a great way to end my Rolling Stones show tour. So, and you find always some meaning in this. So let's talk about that.
Yes, that is one of my superpowers, I think, is connecting the dots between stories and that. And Gene and I were talking offline beforehand because we're both in the executive recruiting space. And one of the things that I know about you, Gene, I know about the company, but now I have a better understanding. And to me, what that story indicates is just, having that strength and courage of taking risks and just seeing a bigger picture and not worrying about, what are the structures, what are the rules. Sometimes you have to bend the rules to get around it, to get where you need to be as an entrepreneur, as a founder. And so it's a great story. I love it so much, but I'm also seeing a direct parallel to like, what does it take to truly be an entrepreneur? And sometimes you have to not even worry about getting told no.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what's coming up to me. It's tenacity, persistence, and really just having that tough skin to just say, I'm not going to accept no for an answer. I'm going to find a workaround.
And it's funny, Ange. So when I left the club business, I left it because my wife, the only reason she'd marry me is if I left that business. So thank God I did. I think I'd be dead now. I definitely would be divorced, Mark, as you know.
Yep.
But my first career is I went to a division of an international Fortune 100 firm called Alcatel. And Alcatel at that time was a telecommunications company. It was a French company, but it was I think it was like one of the top 50 companies in the world. And I worked on a division on the East Coast. I started in sales, went into sales management, then general management. And very quickly, I was running East Coast operations with about 1,500 people reporting into me. And they had an office in every major city. And back then, it was the 1980s. I was being paid very well. But I was on an airplane every single day. I was flying. Some days I was in two cities the same day. I wasn't home. We had a young family, and I made that decision to go into my own business. And I looked at a bunch of them. I took my number one GM from Philadelphia, and I selected executive search because we had used some search firms ourselves at Alcatel to hire the staff. I thought we could bring some value. But for me, it was taking the risk and taking the chance and making a decision. It wasn't a financial decision. I just wanted to be home at night and not have to be away. And we were one of the first recruiting firms back then to put video teleconferencing into our offices. So there was like a 2-second delay, but it kept us from having to go and visit all the clients face to face. That was a really, really big decision because I took every dollar I had and we used it to start the firm. And thank God it worked out.
Gene, perfect transition. Thank you. I love how we went from the Rolling Stones to getting to starting your business. Perfect time to introduce you, because you all out there don't know who we're talking to yet, which is Gene Rice, who is co-founder, and he just told the story of how he got there, of Rice Cohen International. And he is also, we're doing a part 2 today. So you're going to hear part 2 with Gene Rice, which is about his foundation, which is called the Plant to Seed Inspire a Dream Foundation, which he co-founded with his wife. So he co-founded Rice Cohen in 1989, and the firm grew to be one of the 30 largest executive retained search firms in America. He was also recognized, which is pretty amazing when you think about that. He was also recognized, this is even more amazing, by Recruited.com as one of the 100 most influential people in the history of recruiting. In 2008, he and his wife co-founded the Plant to Seed Inspire Dream Foundation, which I just mentioned, which helps youth from the underserved community pursue their passions. The charity has helped over 800 kids and was featured in People magazine. And Gene, with his daughter, co-wrote the Amazon bestseller Grad to Grown Up, which I've gotten a copy of, and we're going to talk more about because this is something, my son is in that kind of transition. We've talked a little bit about this, so I'm going to talk to Gene more about that. And it's 68 tips he had to lead a successful professional and personal life. Gene believes in giving back at every opportunity, and you'll hear more about that in part 2. So let's pick up where we left off. So that inspired you to start the company. What happened after that?
Well, thank God we had no idea, but and Ange, you might know this. We initially, when we went into the business, do we put our own shingle on the door or do we align with a franchise? We actually at that time decided to buy a franchise with the largest recruiting franchise at the time, a group called Management Recruiters International. I don't know if you remember them, Angie. They were a contingency over 1,000 offices. So we started with them, and the first year we did more revenue than any office had ever done. And then from then, the next 7 years, my partner and I, we were the office of the year 6 times, and him and I were the managing partners of the year 7 times, so 7 times in a row. We left them to start Rice Cohen because we started getting invited into the boardroom to compete for C-level searches. And what we discovered is when we lost, it was because of the name and not because of who we were. And we made the decision at that point that, hey, we don't mind losing a search, but we want to lose it based on our own experience, not because they align us with more of 1,000 other offices. So we became Rice Cohen International at that time, and that's when the firm really exploded, and we went into a different direction, And I stayed in the business for 30 years, Mark, and I'm sure Angie feels this way. I didn't know it going in, but it gave me purpose. I really loved what I did. That's why no matter how big the firm became, I never wanted to stop working and being involved with the candidates and the clients. Back then, half of the C-level executives that we placed would pick up their family from one city and move to another city to run the company. And I took real pride in getting to know them and their families to make sure that this was right for everybody, and it helped as I built a lot of really great relationships, and I really enjoyed what I did every day. And that's why I stayed in it for so long.
Gene, what you just described sounds like, hey, I left this company, I started a company. 30 years later, we're one of the largest recruiting firms in America, and I'm one of the top recruiters. I know it sounds really easy. And I know that wasn't the case. I know it wasn't like a glide in the water park. So tell us about that, the challenges you faced along the way, and what kind of things you had to overcome, and what kind of strengths you had to call upon yourself and your leadership team in order to get where you got to.
You know what it was, Mark? I will tell you, and I share this with people sometimes in the business. What my partner and I did, and Angie, you might remember this, when you first went into search back then, the person driving the business, right? So you came in, you had to capture the client. Once you captured the client, then you had to figure out where to get the candidates that might be able to do this role. So you had to stop and do all the research. Once you did all the research, then you had to reach out and at that time touch a lot of people and make a decision on what 5 candidates, what shortlisted candidates were you going to put in front of the client. Then you had to go after that, do all kinds of reference checking, close the search down on both sides. And you were only able to do so much business when you were doing all those pieces. What my partner and I did, and we were the first firm to do it, is we figured out how to build the pillars underneath us. And it took some time. We had a number of failures, but meaning we brought in a research team eventually. Then we brought in someone we would call a consultant that would actually do the first reach out. Then it grew to a point where Angie and Mark, we might have more of an experienced person do the first interview, and then we would only get involved at the end to help close the deal. So when that happened, we did the upfront piece, we did the back piece, and we were able to build the business and build the clients, and then hire the staff. As someone moved up and did more, then we were able to spin them off to do their own vertical space. And that allowed us to really build the firm. And Angie, I know you're going to talk about culture, but we did a lot of things to create the culture that we wanted that kept people with us. Because in the executive search business, Mark, there's nothing greater than tenure with a staff. You have to do this for a while. You have to figure out what it's all about.
I didn't mean to stop you. We only have 1 minute till commercial, but that's a perfect place to branch off. I do just want to ask you, so it sounds like what I got out of that was you had a concept. It wasn't easy. You had to fail a lot of times before you got there. There were challenges along the way, and there was some strength there, which I would imagine it was commitment to your purpose, it sounds like. But tell me what it was that kept you going through all those failures because of course that's how you learn is through your failures. But what kept you going throughout all that? And then we'll take a break.
Mark, initially, I'll be honest with you, what kept me going is not wanting to go back into an executive job and having to be on an airplane again. So it was really wanting to financially support my family in such a way, right, that I did not have to leave them, because we had 4 small children at the time. And we had, I had moved around for corporate America, so we had no family around us, right? And I did not, so I was like, the alternative here is me being on an airplane again. So that really drove me. Now, one of the things, I'll be honest with you, we had some really quick success. And one of the things I did, Mark, is before we left Alcatel, this was, probably that gave us the springboard. We went and met with the CEO, my partner and I. And we said, listen, we've analyzed how much you spent last year on recruiting. Okay. No one knows the company better than us. We would like to become your in-house recruiting firm. In return, we will personally do all the hiring for you. You'll give us a retainer every month of X. Every 3 months, we'll even out. And we gave them a little bit of a break, Angie, right at that time. And what that did is it gave us the revenue to build the business. But it was making that retainer paid all the bills.
So you had some secure income.
Opening up, we had a check coming in from a Fortune 100 firm that kind of gave us the foundation. Now, my partner took care of that and did all their hiring. I built the firm on the other side, and then we came together. Wow. 2 years later, we stopped the contract because we got so busy on the other side.
Wow, that's a great planning, great thinking. So you took a lot of the risk off the table by doing that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. And I know Ange has a question for you.
Do you remember the joy of discovering your passion? The Plant a Seed, Inspire a Dream Foundation believes every child deserves that chance, providing annual scholarships for kids ages 10 to 18 from low-income families to pursue their dreams in athletics, art, music, and more. Based in Yardley, PA, they serve the greater Philadelphia region and South Jersey, connecting young people with positive role models and life-changing activities. They've already helped 837 children find their passion, and your child could be next. And don't miss out on Grad to Grown Up by Jean Rice and Courtney Begrowitz. Your ultimate guide to launching personal and professional success. 100% of book proceeds supports the Plant a Seed, Inspire a Dream Foundation. If someone in your family needs help finding and following their dreams, apply now at plantaseedfoundation.org. Empower a child's passion today.
We're back on Founders Forum. And Ange, I know you wanted to follow up on the culture questions, so let's take it away.
Yeah. So, Jean, you mentioned, talking a little about your company culture, but I want to position it just slightly different in that, I understand the space, and I know that being a search firm that supported other search firms in many ways was a very creative way to kind of shift, how you did business, both from a client perspective. So I'm curious from the culture perspective, how did you get people on board to kind of get that vision? Right? Not just to kind of look at everybody as a pure competitor, but how do you collaborate, but also maintain, that bigger vision? Because you got to have the right people on board. So I'm really curious how you did that.
Well, first of all, we had like 60 people at the peak before we sold it to $1 billion company, and then we acquired it back. But there were certain things. The first thing, Angie, is we really believed that once we hired someone and made that hiring decision, then we had a real commitment to them. So we really put in an assessment selection process. We used behavior-based interviewing. We took our time in really making sure we hired the right people, right? And, at the end of it, I would always tell them, even when the assessment team would say, this is the person we want to hire, before I hired anybody, I said to them, I'm going to ask you to take a day off from work, and I want you to come into my office, and I'm going to have you sit with a number of people And at the end of that day, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Number 1, can you see yourself doing this? But more importantly, the second question, can you see yourself enjoying doing this? Because once you commit and once we commit, we're going to put a lot of time into it. So we really had a good assessment process. Now, this was back in the days when search firms, as you remember, recruiting, everyone came into the office, Angie, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
But then what we did is we did some little things and we built on them, right? Because we understood how important the tenure was. So when someone got hired, right away they had a manager, but we also gave them a mentor. We called it our Helping Hands program, where that was the person you went to when you had a question that wasn't appropriate for the manager. You know, what's the dress code on this day? You know, and that person took them out to lunch once a week and really took on that mentorship program. But then we did some other things. We had a 401k profit sharing plan, and we had what was called a cash balance plan. And every single year, we felt that if we did well, we wanted to share that with the employees. So the employees they got 15% profit sharing, they got 100% match in the 401k. We had a cash balance plan. Now, we were an entrepreneur, Mark. We had a 6-year vesting. If the person left within the first 2 years, they lost the company's match. But every year after that, they got 20%. And that was almost our way of putting golden handcuffs on. But then we did some other little things.
I love that. We do a lot of that planning for clients, and that's brilliant what you did. That's great.
Yeah. We had a learning library where any kind of training or learning that going on in the industry, they could get videos, they could get CDs, they could get books, they could go at any time and sign something out. We did some really little things. I mean, I'll tell you a story because one of my ex-employees is at Corn Ferry now, Angie. His wife told me this about a year ago. Every single anniversary, when someone's birthday in the office, the office manager would have this giant birthday card, and everybody would write something to them, right? And we'd bring a cake out at the end of the day. It cost nothing. But this wife said to me when I saw her last year, she said, Gene, I don't know if you understand how much those birthday cards meant to Jeff. He still has one on the night table next to our bed. And I'm like, I came home and said to my wife, would you believe that thing would really? But it made such a difference. Then we did our own convention. We had goals, right? We would take them someplace really nice once a year. And we would send them stuff because once they went to a convention and they brought their significant other, that significant other would be on them. Are we going to Hawaii? Are we going to Puerto Rico this year? So we did that. We also had a monthly quota makers. Everyone got a quota, and everyone who made that quota, once a month, we'd go out. We might do bowling one afternoon. We might go to a Phillies game, but we tried to reward them for their successes. So we did a lot of little stuff like that. And I think myself and my partner, we were aware it was important for us to touch everybody every day. You know, just touch them. How's your day going? What, you having difficulty here? So we did a lot of little things I think really, really led to the culture, and it really led to people staying with us and led to the success. Yeah,
I think that's super important, Jane. And I know we don't have a ton of time to talk about this, but you made the first word that you said was investing in your people. And I think that's a very lost art in a lot of organizations today. And, I think it's become such a, hire people, you don't match, you don't hit this number, you're out. And it really is an investment like anything else in life, right? And so I love that and the stories that you support that. So, I know we're kind of getting near the end and we've got some other questions, but, hopefully we could chat more about that in another time, because I think it's really unique what you're bringing and talking about.
Yeah. And really what you just said is it's the sum of a lot of little things that you did, all common sense. A lot of things, none of those ideas, no offense, are new. I've heard them everywhere, but I don't think I've ever heard a company that did all those things, all those little things together. And I think that's really unique and that's really powerful, the way you handle it.
Well, it's really funny. I mean, I'll tell you one really quick, this whole story. One of the guys used to work for me. He's now over at Russell Reynolds, but that whole thing where he observed one day, and then he was in the conference room and we had glass looking down into the bullpen. And I said, I'm going to come back and I want to hear from you. Can you see yourself doing this? And he came back and I can absolutely see myself doing this. And then years later, he told me, when you left the conference room, I looked down, there was one of your employees asleep at his desk. And he goes, I can definitely do that.
That's really funny. By the way, those two questions are unique, though. That was something that really that's such a great starting point for an employee. Hey, we don't have much time, but I do want to ask you, if this were a year from today, Gene, and we're talking, what's your vision for the future? What would have to happen over that next year for you to feel that was a great year in your life and business?
Well, as you know, I just recently retired. So
Yep.
for me, it's more about giving back. So like in the last month, I did a speech at Bucks County Community College for 90 business students just on giving back to them. Yesterday, last 2 weeks ago, I was at a high school and their senior class took the book I wrote and made it into a course. So everyone in the senior class has to take the course of the book. And I went and I spoke to them and, just gave back and try to do things that can help them in their own careers. So I see myself being very involved with that, doing more of that. The charity, next week we're going in, we have 3 new Plan to See kids that we're going to award scholarships to, and we meet them and they meet their families before we do that. So I'm just going to continue to give back any way I can and try to make a positive difference.
That's great. We have time for a couple quick lightning round questions. If you were talking to your younger self, what advice would you give you?
Mark, I look back and I've thought about this. I would tell my younger self to take a deep breath and try to enjoy the journey. I was so focused on making money that too focused on it. I needed to maybe smell the roses a little bit more. That you will get there, you will get there, but it's important to enjoy the journey as you're going there. And maybe I didn't do that as much as I should have.
Just a real quick thing about that. I learned a lot through golf. Golf is such a difficult sport. And I have sort of a mentor as a member of my club who's a teacher. He's not a pro, but he's a very low handicap golfer and a student of the game. And he had given me some lessons, and they're pretty complex, and there was a lot of things involved. And I saw him before a match. I saw him the other day. He was actually playing with my match this year, but like 2 years ago, I was in a match. And I said, what quick advice would you give me, before I go out there today? He says, enjoy the ride. And that's all I thought about, and I won the match. It was so easy that day. And golf's not an easy sport, but it was so easy that day.
My son is addicted to golf, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he belongs to 2 clubs. He belongs to Jericho National and the Ridge.
Yeah,
he also belongs to this thing where I guess you get access to the top 50 courses in America, right?
Yep.
If he was to die today and went to heaven, and he said, okay, what do you want heaven to be? He said, I want to play 36 holes of golf every day, right? With me, if I died and went to hell, I'd play 36 holes of golf every day, right?
And on that note, there's 2 sides of that coin. This is it for Founders Forum for today. I have another question to ask you, but we have a part 2, so we'll do that then. Thank you, everyone, for being here on Founders Forum. We'll see you next week with Gene Rice again, and have a great day.